Hey everyone, my name is Jeff, and I'm here today with Coach Packing of the LA Valiant to talk about being a coach in esports. So first up, I want to ask you, how did you get into esports?
Yeah, so it was actually it's kind of a little bit of a long story, so I apologize if it's long. But I've answered it before, and it was I guess kind of just fate as how it worked out because I was into like traditional sports and everything growing up, and like that's all I ever wanted to do was work in traditional sports.
Hmm.
And then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was like really struggling with like PTSD, and I couldn't sleep at night. So I picked up playing video games as like a way to like use that time.
Hmm.
And throughout I guess I guess that was 2014.
Okay.
I dabbled in playing League of Legends before then, but like I really started to just like constantly play games. I was playing Hearthstone all the time, competing in tournaments. I was playing a lot of League of Legends. I picked up Counter-Strike and started to get good at Counter-Strike. And then it just from there it was like it kind of felt like it was something that suited my skill set. And since I had all that time, I was available to, be a resource to all the players I was able to work with, and
Hmm.
it kind of helped me get through like the rough times. So I guess, like I said, it was just kind of fate that it just like worked out. From I wanted to be a player, and then I realized that I was really good, but my skill set would be better in a different in a different way. So I went down that path and started dabbling in coaching in Counter Strike, and just kind of saw what it was and what it looked like. And then when Overwatch came out, and I was like, man, I really want to go pro in this game. Like I'm gonna do my best. Once alpha and beta were done, I was like, wow, I'm really good at this. Maybe I actually have a chance. Once everybody started to play the game, I was like, no, man, there's no chance. Like I need to go back to what I'm good at. Like just be realistic with yourself, and good things will happen. So I ended up, I think it was, I think the game came out early 2017, and by like June of 2017, I started to like fully commit to coaching full time, and I started with a team. We're called Winston Alt IRL is what we were called.
Okay.
And it had on that team Arrow, who used to coach with the Dallas Fuel, and Tickety, who coached with Dallas Fuel. They were some of my players on that team.
Hmm.
Coffee, who ended up playing in Contenders early in the Contenders inception. He was on my team, so I ended up like inheriting a lot of really good players and a lot of people who had made it very far in the scene.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience for me, and I mean it was awesome. I wouldn't trade it for the world. So, but
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
You went over quite a few different esports scenes there. That has to be a lot of fun just to see the
Yeah,
differences between all
yeah,
of
and then
them.
now being involved with Valorant too, it's really cool because it's kind of like a mesh of both games in a sense. With it's like the tactical shooter side of things with Counter Strike, and then it has like the
Like the
ability
abilities, yeah.
usage and all that stuff with the is in like a lot of like tempo, which is like really used with Overwatch. So it's really cool and really awesome to be able to be involved in multiple things. So I kind of am a firm believer of the more you do and the more knowledge you get, the better you're going to be at your job. So I'm very thankful that I had the opportunity to do that. So
Awesome. Well, we're here to talk about you being a coach, so let's talk about that. Can you walk me through like a basic day of coaching with LA Valiant during the normal season?
yeah, so I guess it differs. So this year specifically was way different than last year was.
Of
So
course.
I mean we could kind of just like compare and contrast a little bit and go through, but generally speaking, the way I like to do things uh is the way we did it last year, which essentially would be, in the mornings, I would have a coaches meeting with the three or four coaches that were on the coaching staff. We'd kind of go over what our expectations for the day were, make sure that all the review and everything we are going to do before practice was prepped. The players were properly getting their player development one-on-ones,
Hmm.
and everything from the last day was tidied up. So we would do that meeting in the morning. We go and we set the goals for the day and what the expectations were, and then we would go and we do a review with the players. Usually, I want to say last year it was like 10:30 in the morning or so.
Was the
We'd
review
start,
with the players?
yeah, we would do a coach led review, and it would just be my macro coach leading review on a specific concept that we were trying to improve on that day. So if it was using tempo, or if it was how we were gonna position position in a specific composition, or whatever the case may be. It could have been anything.
Hmm.
And we'd go over and we'd pull some clips and we'd watch that, and we'd have an open discussion about that. We'd do that, give the players a little bit of a break for lunch. They'd hit their lunch. We'd come back. We'd hop into a scrim from 1 to 3. In between the blocks, we'd let the players get their food. They'd come back to the practice facility. And then in between the first and second block, we would do like a player-led review, and we'd get one of the leaders on the team. So last year, we had Custa do it a lot. We had Indy do it a lot. We had Fact Fiction do it a lot because he was really smart with the macro. We had those guys really lead an internal review of like, hey, listen, like what did you guys see from that scrim? Like, how do you guys think you were improving on that concept? What can we do to make it better? How does it feel inside into each individual role, et cetera, et cetera. Then we'd go into that second scrim of the day. We'd try to not only improve on that concept that was initially brought up at the beginning of the day, but to master that concept. We'd see how that looks at the end of that block. If there needed to be remediation, we'd stay around. We'd do some more review. So I guess now we're talking about that's probably about 6:30 p.m. So we would do that. Then we let all the players, send all the players home after that was done. If there was no review, if we wanted to do more macro review, we'd do that afterwards, and that would go from like 6 to 7. And that would kind of be like a hybrid type review of coaches bringing up the concepts that either weren't fully seen to like the standards we wanted them to be, or just talking about things in general, things that we saw, maybe things that were interesting, as well as just general performance from the day. And then we'd send all the players home. When all the players got home, everybody would have their days to do their player development stuff with one of the coaches. So, so I'd be making sure that, my coaches were doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're going to see those players. Some of them like to do it in person. Some of them like to do it online. So sometimes it's, sitting in there and making sure that the concepts that we're talking about that want to be improved upon are what the primary objective of that is. Sometimes that's to make sure that the assistant coaches are just being like fully evaluated and making sure that they're staying up to par on what their job is supposed to be, and that I'm able to give them feedback and be critical for them too, because my job as a head coach is not only to set the vision and the standards for the team and the players, but it's to set the standards and the vision for the coaches as well, and be able to enable the players to do better. So when we had the system like we did last year, a lot of my responsibilities were to really enable those coaches to do their jobs and to interact with the players on a daily basis. And then if the players had interactions with me, it was either something's going bad and we need to sit down and talk about it, or potentially we wanted to make changes in the roster, or we're doing something with compositions or players who are going to be playing. But it was a very like hierarchy type system that we wanted to make sure that the guys who had like the boots on the ground and were going to be dealing with the players every day, because we had 3 assistant coaches, those guys were going to be talking to them and constantly like being able to be there and be resources for them. And then if any problems arose, that would be the first line of defense. And then if a problem got to me, then it'd be taken that way. So I really believed in running the team a lot like my military experience, and a lot like my traditional sports experience, because I had a very good football coach and a very good wrestling coach. It turns out it was the same guy. We're growing up, and he was one of the people who really kind of instilled that kind of leadership style into me from an early age. I mean, I started playing football for him when I was 14 years old, and he had that like, if you're coming to talk to me, it's either really good or really bad, and you hope it's a really good thing. But his job is not to be the person who is constantly, making the corrections for these small things. That's what you pay your assistant coaches for. That's what their job is. It's to be the one who has the boots on the ground and who is making those relationships with the players, and being that first line of defense. So last year, having all of that ability to do that was great, and we had all the resources, and we did a great job. And after I took over in stage 2, we went from 0-7 in stage 1 to missing the playoffs by I think it was 1 game. It was 1 game because Chengdu beat us. So it was like I said, a very leadership oriented, very structured style of things. Now this year, on the other hand,
much more different.
It was very different. Yeah. So the beginning of the year, it started as normal. So all our off season, everything, it was all normal. And then when we needed to make the cuts due to COVID, and I lost 2/3 of my coaching staff, it then became into a position where my job as a coach needed to shift from being the leadership figure, being the vision setter, to maintaining those things, but also being a person who is involved daily with delivering the macro feedback,
Mm-hmm.
involved daily with working on the players at an individual level. And that transition was a transition that was, I guess, a little bit easier for me because I guess this is my second year doing this, so I still am very fresh into when I was doing all that stuff at the beginning of, I guess, late 2018 and early 2019 when I was an assistant coach on Valiant. It's still very fresh in my memory of, how I'm supposed to be doing these things. And when we were doing the, I don't want to say rebuild last year, but when we were doing the, um, I guess
Like refresh or something.
remediation
Mm-hmm.
after stage one, and I sat down and talked to the players and said, hey, listen, like, we suck, like, we need to improve. It was very much like the same thing, that was all hands on deck. I needed to be doing work with the players, all the other coaches needed to be doing everything, because we had to be running at like double efficiency. So
Mm-hmm.
so this year it ended up being, when it was myself and Gunba, it ended up just being us working as one. Like, it wasn't, I don't really look at this year as much of a like, there were like coaching roles specifically within the staff. It was, we are one coach, and it was, me and Gumba, and it was me and Unter, and it was, we need to figure out what we can do to get this done. And sometimes it was, depending on schedule, sometimes it was, you know, uh, me doing some macro stuff and him doing player dev during the scrims, or whoever needed feedback, or him doing the macro and then me doing something else. And after the scrims, maybe, he was when Unter was here, he was in Australia. So it's like, we get done with scrims and maybe it's really late. Maybe I need to start doing player dev stuff in the afternoon, in the evening time for me. And then when he wakes up in the morning, he's doing some more with some other players. So it ended up becoming a really interesting dynamic this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very thankful and very grateful for all the work that Unter did this year, because it was, uh, he was able to step in with very limited coaching experience. British Hurricanes was his first coaching job. And he was able to step in and kind of like understand, like, hey, like, shit's already kind of hit the fan. Like, we don't have time to like mess around, and our standards are very high, and that's why we're successful, is because we do hold ourselves to that standard, regardless of if it's one coach or two coach or four coaches. Um, so it was really good and really, really awesome to see, like, that he was able to just kind of get his feet planted. He had like a week period where it was like kind of like an in-doc, like, hey, this is what's gonna go on. And then from there it was like, it's over. Like, we're going full speed. Like, let's go, let's get this going. So it was good. But yeah, no, that's a long answer. But unfortunately it's
Crazy time right now.
yeah, it's a complex thing. And I mean, there's even more that goes into that, of the stuff that I'm not going to share, because there's a lot of stuff that our team does that, other teams don't do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of the reasons why we're successful. But yeah, I mean, just from like a basic premise of, how things look from last year to this year, and I hope things go back to the way they were last year, so we could, actually start to get all of our systems back in place, and get that structure back, and it makes it a lot more comfortable for the players. And
Mm-hmm.
since they'd actually be able to go to the campus and like physically see people instead of being locked in their rooms for 8 months. I mean, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice. So
Definitely, no, I agree with you there. It would be nice
no.
to, and as a fan and as someone who's been to the events, I would love to get back to the events too.
Oh man, I'll tell you, when we went to Dallas for opening weekend, absolutely outstanding. All the people I met there, and
Mm-hmm.
we went out for like dinners, and like there was a steakhouse right by the esports arena down there, and we won the game against Dallas, and we go down to the steakhouse down there, and there's like 15 people sitting at the bar, and they're like, oh my god, it's LA Valiant guys, like, you guys are awesome. And it's just like, that stuff, um that stuff is awesome. And I mean, it's the same at Blizzard Arena and anything
Oh
else.
yeah.
It's just, I mean, you miss it.
Hmm. Well, as much as I'd love to talk more about that, and I'm sure we could forever, we do need to get
Yeah,
on
for
some
real,
other
yeah.
things. So,
Sure, yeah.
you talked a lot about giving feedback not only to players, either in player development or to your assistant coaches to like give them guidance. So, like,
Yeah.
what are the critical things you need to remember when giving feedback to players and assistant coaches?
Yeah, so for coaches, I think it's just being brutally honest with what you believe, because that is like my job. My job is to make sure that what I want to have done is being done, and that we are going to accomplish that vision. And if that vision's not successful, then that's my fault. That's not their fault. But making sure that they're getting the feedback of, hey, listen, is this task being met, is probably the most important thing. And then from there, it's really about, if they don't have the best relationship with a player, like why is that? Can you alter your feedback style? Like, how do you reach people better? And how do you be multidimensional as a coach? And that's a problem that a lot of coaches do have. A lot of them I've seen from even great ones, they only have like one gear, and it's like, I am super analytical. I could go like this, or, or I'm very friendly with the players, and I can't ever turn on that disciplinary side of things. And to be a good coach in Overwatch, and to be a good coach in general, even traditional sports, you have to be able to understand what those players' needs are, what the background is, and be able to fill those shoes, and be able to talk to one player for 15 minutes and have one coaching style, and then go to another one-on-one and talk to another player for 15 minutes and have a completely different coaching style. And that's how you reach the most people. So that's kind of the way I look at it on the coaching side of things. And then on the player side of things, I guess I kind of answered that question a little bit there too. It's really about finding the style of coaching that is going to be able to reach that player. So if it's like for us, like we had some Korean players, and there's language barriers and things like that. So sometimes doing like text feedback is better, or sometimes like asking their ideas or asking their opinions, being very open about it, not being very authoritative about it, and saying like, this is the best option. It's well, what do you think? Like, if you did this instead, like, how do you think that would impact the game? Would that be something that would be effective? Like, and kind of approaching it from more a holistic standard. That tends to work a lot with some players. And then, like I said, other times you need to be really authoritative, or, hey, listen, you're like, why are you messing this up? You messed it up 15 times in a row. Like come on, like, let's get a brain here. Let's figure this out. Like, why is it like, what's going wrong? And it's really about finding that perfect zone of like approachability, that the players want to be able to talk to you and that they can talk openly, but still having that level of respect that if you tell them that you think something is going to work, or you want them to try something, that they will have the ability to do it, or not the ability to do it, but they'll have the will to do it, because they trust you and they believe in you. So I guess those would kind of be like the major concepts, at least.
I mean, the majority of that sounds like it's built around having these relationships and being able to build those relationships with your coaches and your players.
Yeah. I think that's a huge part of leadership just in general. I mean, across, anything from, business to traditional sports to esports, it's people who build relationships and make others comfortable and make others believe in them find ways to be successful, because that's what leadership's all about. And I learned that early when I was in the Marine Corps. I had two bosses, one right before I went to Afghanistan, one right when I came back. And the one that I had before, you'd run through a freaking brick wall for him. You would do whatever you needed to do to make that man successful, because you believed in everything he said. And maybe that's just because he was charismatic. Maybe that's because he was a good leader in general. He had those qualities, but unbelievable human being, in my opinion. And like, that is the type of leader that I always strive to emulate. And I think that units that run at that efficiency, or teams that run at that efficiency, they'll always be successful. On the other hand, when I came back, I had a leader who was very, very much, you do as I say, and I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do. So sometimes it was right on line, or sometimes it was conflicting, and this, that, whatever. And it started to create, a divide between like, hey, listen, like, I don't really like this guy. If I don't like this guy, why am I going to put my neck on the line to, be successful for him? Because if I do good, then that makes him look good, and I don't want that. So, like I said, I learned early on that like, that as the leadership style, and having the people be able to trust you and believe in you, really matters a lot. And, anytime we have conflicts or anything like that, which we've had plenty of them this year because of COVID and just not being able to see the players, not being able to talk, language barriers and things like that. Whenever anything comes up, priority turns from always will turn from being successful as a team to rebuilding the relationships and making sure that people are growing as people. If that's myself, if that's our players, if that's anyone, it's always about putting the people first. It's always about developing our players and our coaches as people, and then winning, secondary to that. So
Awesome. Now, you've talked a lot about the difficulties of this year with COVID
yeah,
and that stuff. So I know you've dealt with a lot of difficult things. So what is it like being the coach of a team that a lot of fans have kind of written off? Because I know that's happened with the Valiant.
yeah. So I don't think I ever had like a very like quote unquote like high profile coaching job ever when I was in Overwatch. Every team that I've ever coached in like I guess Hammers Esports and then Method and then Envision, Angry Titans, they were always kind of looked as like the stepchild of like all of the other like all of the big name teams like when
Mm-hmm.
FaZe was in and NRG and so on and so forth. We weren't big name brands, and it's something that I've been very familiar with, but I think a lot of the players weren't really familiar with. And it's making sure that you just use that fuel and add it to the fire. You go, hey, listen, we know what we're capable of, and that's the only thing that matters. All we have to do is be successful. We have to, put our foot on the gas and prove to people that we're a good team.
Mm-hmm.
And if we play with that chip on our shoulder and we make that something that we talk about every single day when we're beating, I think early in the year before the season started, we were beating Shock in scrims, we were beating Philly in scrims, we were beating all these teams in scrims, and we're like, dude, we know we're really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a couple of those players even said stuff on their streams and we're like, hey, listen, like Valiant's a dark horse team this year, like they're pretty good. And people were still writing us off and saying, oh, they're going to be bottom of the barrel, whatever. All that stuff didn't matter. It just adds the motivation, and being able to find ways to encapsulate that and really get the players to buy in to like, hey, everybody thinks you're shit. Like, do you think you're shit? No, you don't. Okay, well, let's prove them wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When you can start developing that and making that part of the culture of, hey, like we are a team, and like let's do this as a team and just be successful, then it makes it really easy to prove people wrong. And even to the end of the season, we were still kind of, I don't want to say we as a collective, but there were some players on the team who were still like, we'd win some of those games, we'd win a game of playoff, and it would be like, people effing ranked us 20th at the beginning of the year, and it's like, like, and you love to see it. It's the passion, it's the energy, it's that camaraderie that really helps. So
Awesome. Now, you mentioned it before we started this interview that you're learning a bit of Korean now since you've got some more time in the off season. But what does a coach do during the off season?
Well, so right now we are we put out coaching application, open application for coaches. Going to evaluate the talent that's out there for coaches, evaluate the talent that's going to be out there for players. We're going to post our open tryout application from that. It's really about planning for next year. As soon as that game was over and we lost in the playoffs, the first conversation we had was, all right, what do we need to do next year for being successful? So right now for us, or I guess for myself, it's really, and Hunter, it's sitting down and looking at the players we have, what the contracts look like. Do we want to bring everyone back? Do we want to try to move players? Are there specific players that we want to target that are on Overwatch League teams? How do the tryouts look? Like, do we want to try to find people through tryouts? All of those kind of things, and that's what we're going to be focused on for the next like 2 months or so. I would say I probably about a month now. It's already been about a couple of weeks, but that's what we're looking at right now, and that's the most important thing right now is finding ways to improve your weak points on your team from the past year, and then being able to build upon that. So we're really looking at that. Obviously a lot of it has to do with budget and waiting for the budget to get approved for just like any other team, any sports team. It's, you can't just go, hey, I like this guy, like let's just offer this guy right now. It's, hey, we really like this guy, like let's wait for the budget to get approved, and then once that gets done, like then we're good to go. But once we get the roster done, then it just kind of shifts into, we'll take a little bit of time off. We'll start doing some kind of like how like the NFL does like their OTAs. We kind of do like the same thing. We'll do, very short, limited practices. We'll do make sure players getting reviews with their coaches and stuff so that they get a familiarity with them and they understand what's going to be expected. And then all the players, we expect them to be back right after Christmas time. And then once that happens, so it'll be really light practice. We'll say from like September, October, November, a little bit of a break for Thanksgiving, a little bit of a break for Christmas. And then once everybody gets there after Christmas, it's full force. Like, we're going just as if it was a regular season and go back to that full practice schedule that hopefully we can use the one from last year. Because like I said, this year it ended up being like, hey, we might do like one review a day and 2 scrims. And I'd be like, hey guys, like mentally, let's save you. Like just try to live, just be human. So.
All right, cool. And then, so if a student or like an aspiring coach is looking to get into coaching, what would you suggest they do? Like, how do they begin this coaching journey?
Yeah, I think, like in my mind, collegiate is a really good like resource right now. If you're in college, even if you're not in college, a lot of collegiate teams are still looking. I feel like that's a really good like entry level way to like get your feet on the ground and like just start like working with an esports team, with players in general, and understanding what that is. I don't think there's a perfect example or a perfect rhyme or reason for how you get into the scene. For me, it was I wanted to do it, and I just started asking around and said, "Hey, listen, like, I want to coach a team. Like, could I come in and show you guys that I'm smart?" And they're like, there was a lot of no's before someone said yes. So it's really
was that the exact line you used?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty open and honest person. I don't try to really sugarcoat things. So, yeah. I mean, I'm sure if it wasn't exactly that, it was probably very close. I could probably look at my DMs and find it, but the fact of the matter is, it's coaching is a thankless profession to begin with. It's not as glamorous as being a player. It's a lot of times you get a lot of the shit and you don't get a lot of the praise, and that's fine. That's if you're trying to get into it for things like that, then you're kind of in the wrong job. But with that same thing, it's like I said, it's not an easy field to crack your way into, because you need to find a mentor. You need to find someone who believes in you, who has experience, and who could start helping you develop and like vouching for you, so that way you can get your way into the higher level teams and start working from there. Because at the end of the day, there's 20 teams, at least in Overwatch, there's 20 teams in Overwatch League. Some teams this year, like my team, ended up on 2 staff, others had 4. But I mean, if you're talking 4 staff per team, that's 80 jobs out of the entire world doing this job. So probability states that unless you're really, really good at what you do, or unless you have really, really good connections, then you're not going to get in. So things I always suggest, and it's one of the reasons why I still go to school, and I went and I got my my bachelor's in aviation science, and I got my pilot's licenses and commercially rated pilot, is because I did that while I was head coaching last year, because
oh damn,
I wanted to make sure that I was still doing my personal development for myself, and that I know esports won't last forever for me. I mean, I hope it does, but when something happens, when it's time for me to call it a day, if that's my choice, if that's someone else's choice, you need to put yourself in a position to be successful long term. And like that would probably be like the biggest piece of advice I would have is don't put all your eggs in the esports basket, or at least esports coaching basket. Make sure you're doing other stuff. It's great if you want to be a coach. It's great if you like. I mean, I don't think I've ever met anyone in my life who's come up to me and said, I've met a lot of people who come up and said, "Oh my God, like Packing 10, like you're awesome. I want to be a pro player for the Gladiators." I've met a lot of people who said that, but I haven't met people who said, "Oh my God, Packing 10, you're so awesome. I wish I was as smart as you, and I want to be a coach." Because that's not, that's not it's not what people want. So, I think going to school, making sure that you're staying educated. Leadership backgrounds are always important. So, I'm not gonna say go join the military to become an esports coach, but having that leadership background, taking leadership studies, some military studies classes in college as well. I think that's something that's extremely underlooked. And then reaching out to people and trying to find a mentor. I've had people reach out to me this past year that they said, just randomly sent me a message on Twitter or sent me a message on Discord and said, hey, listen, I'm really thinking about getting into coaching. I was wondering if you had any advice, whatever, a couple other things. And I try to respond to every message I get because that's the type of person that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I find someone that I think has talent, then I try to help them and mentor them. And there's been a couple of people like that, throughout the years, a couple that happened just this year. So being able to try to find those relationships and not being afraid to get shut down if you like reach out to people, all of those things and a little bit of luck, and then you kind of find your way getting into a position that it'll be not bad. But other than that, it's all about studying the game, leadership, studying the game, and understanding that when you come into coaching, there's going to be a lot more failures than there are successes, and you have to be okay with that, and you have to learn from it. And if you learn from them, you'll keep getting better, and if you don't, then you probably won't have a very long career. So
awesome. And I think it's also important to remember, like, when you're reaching out to people, like, if they don't respond, it's not because they don't want to, it's just maybe they don't have time. Because I mean, it sounds like you're doing 10 to 12-hour days.
Oh yeah, I mean, right now it's like 5 Eastern to like 3 a.m. right now. During the regular season on our playoff push, it was like noon until 3 a.m. So like it was it was long days, but you do what you do to try to be successful. And if you're not okay with hard work, then again, probably not a profession that you should be pursuing. So
awesome. So last thing I want to ask you is, do you have a favorite moment, or what do you love most about esports?
Favorite moment. I think I have a couple. I'll say I have two. No, my first one is, I think it was like 2017. I was working with Envision. McGravy was on that roster. Fire was on that roster. A couple Owl players were on there. Fozix, another friend. We did really well, and we ended up making it into the Contender Season 0 playoffs, and we made it through all the brackets and all that stuff, and we got to play in the group stage. And we went out to San Diego to do a boot camp for it, and that was the first time I ever came to the realization of, hey, I'm actually going to get to go to X location to coach a game and meet these players and talk to them about it all the time and do this, do that. And I mean, it was simply amazing. And being able to do it with people that like McGravy that I've known for that long, plus some, and be able to work with a player like that then, and then, be able to work with them now and see that kind of like growth and development, both from myself and from that player. That's probably one of my favorite moments. And the other one would be Angry Titans 2018 Overwatch Contenders, when we made it to the finals for EU, and it was at the Paris World Cup. And I got to go out and fly out to Paris, and there's a little chauffeur there with a little sign that said Packing 10 on it, and then you get chauffeured to the hotel, and you're out there, and then you get to go out there and see all that and all the crazy fans out in Paris. And we were playing against an all French team in the finals, and I mean, they're just absolute raucous crowd, and it was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And I'll never forget that after we lost that game, and everybody's so sad, and everybody's crying and everything. We took our bus down to in front of the Eiffel Tower, and we were all having some drinks and stuff out in front of the Eiffel Tower, just talking about the season. I mean, once in a lifetime experience, absolute once in a lifetime experience, and I'll never forget it.
Awesome. Well, that is all I have for you. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me.
Sure, no problem. As you can tell, I don't have a problem talking. So.
No. So for everyone else out there, I hope you enjoyed this interview, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.